Hi, and welcome to a Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. In today's episode, we're talking nutrition. More specifically, I'm looking to discuss food, our diets, and nutrition in the context of both diet trends, such as plant-based diets, and a shifting perspective on how we grow and consume our daily foods, and how all of that impacts our gut health, immune function, and overall health and well-being. So I believe we're heading toward a new way of living, diet and agriculturally speaking. And to that end, I'm thrilled to have Jennifer Maynard with me today. So Jennifer is the co-founder and CEO of Nutrition for Longevity. Now, Jennifer spent more than 20 years in the field of biotechnology and pharmaceuticals, which she originally pursued to try to make a change for the better in human health. She left her career as a pharma executive to pursue her passion for food as medicine, as she believes that only by addressing what we put on our plates can we begin to truly combat chronic illness. So in pursuit, she founded Greater Greens, which is a regenerative farming operation that combines modern agriculture, such as vertical aquaponics, with regenerative farming practices. And in doing so, they harvest the greatest benefits of nature while still preserving and regenerating it. So once that farm was fully operational, she co-founded Nutrition for Longevity with El Nutra to provide clean, healthy produce from the farm in a precise way that uses the science behind the longevity diet. So during the pandemic last year, Jennifer also founded United for Longevity, which is a nonprofit that provides food and nutrition services to combat acute and chronic illnesses as well, such as by supporting the frontline workers during the COVID-19 crisis. So with all that said, it is my pleasure to welcome Jennifer today. Jennifer, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. And I just love talking to you. And I want to tell listeners that you and it occurred to me that we actually met almost exactly a year ago pre-pandemic, which is right. And so much has changed since then. And Jennifer had also joined me for one of my webinars last year on clean eating. So today I'm just really excited to build on that discussion. So Jennifer, not just in general, how has COVID and a shift in diet trends changed the way that we prioritize nutrition and diet, such as our daily habits, both individually and organizationally, and at a society level?
So I think what COVID did, one of, the positive outcomes of it was it did put nutrition and our diet and active lifestyle really in the forefront of how important that is to just keeping the body balanced. And whether you are pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, it doesn't really matter, because it's really important to have a balanced body either way, so that if you do get the vaccine, it's even more effective and supports your body, and your body can adapt to it and build up that immune system and immune response to it. And if you're trying to do it without the vaccine, it gives you a stronger boost as well. So I think before the vaccine was available, it became really important for people to really prioritize that, because there wasn't really any alternative options. And then even now, a lot of doctors are saying, you shouldn't just put that to the wayside now because there's a vaccine, because there's all sorts of other challenges that we're facing. I saw a few things happen that were not, it brought the importance of this to light, but we also had a lot more sedentary living. So you had people sitting more, not going out as much. You had a lot higher stress levels in certain individuals, whether it was job loss or just worrying about the economy. So you actually had a lot of stress eating. So we've had, in some ways, I guess, some of the additional negative side effects of COVID is a lot of the doctors that I know and scientists are thinking that we might see an acceleration of chronic illness because of the stress and the stress eating, and a lot of people gaining weight during COVID. So some people prioritize their health and lost weight and used it as an opportunity to really get healthy and boost their immune system. And then we had a lot of people with the opposite, where they gained weight and they gained a more sedentary lifestyle. So now that's something that we're going to have to cope with as a country, as a world. And I think both of them surround and have a focal point around nutrition and active lifestyle. So it's really important that we continue that prioritization and reverse some of the things that came out of this pandemic.
Oh, completely. And it's really, I want to say a shame, of course, that people recognize the importance of our lifestyle, meaning diet, exercise, the stress management at the same time. And they listen when you speak now about diet and nutrition more and wellness. However, at the same time, in their own daily lives, like you said, the stress was just, so off the charts that it led to a lot of stress eating and weight gain. And I think now that we're slowly coming out of the acute phase, we're in this more chronic stress phase. I think people are really looking to make changes on a daily basis, and maybe they don't always have all the information they need and resources. So that's what I want to talk about today. Like, if they hear about, say, going plant-based, let's talk about that, Jennifer. And there's so many aspects of a plant-based diet versus a weight loss diet that I'd like to talk about, including, which I would love for you to speak to this, how this impacts, as I said in my intro, our gut microbiome, and in that sense, our immune function, our overall health and well-being. And then what I want to kind of tell people is that the weight loss is a side effect of really focusing on those positive aspects. So go ahead. It's a very long-winded question, but I'd love for you to speak to all that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that is one thing that we already saw a trend towards more plant-based eating or plant-forward eating, more of a reducitarian diet in the U.S. So basically just less animal-based products. And I think this is an important trend for a lot of reasons, and I'll get into that. But we did see that kind of accelerate with COVID. I mean, to the point where in the next 2 years, it's going to have grown from almost a non-existent industry, or a very, very tiny niche one, to a $23.3 billion industry. So it's really fast moving. It's one of the fastest growing segments in the world of food. And I think that's really important. If we just look at it from environmental reasons, 80% of our farmland in the U.S. is consumed just for meat production. So that's a really important shift, that we can save a lot of resources if we just go to more of a reducitarian or a plant-based diet. And then there's the health benefits. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of studies that show increasing our consumption of fruits and vegetables can dramatically help reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, obesity, some cancers. And yet, knowing that and having thousands of studies, only 1 in 10 Americans actually consumes that needed amount of fruits and vegetables. So there's so much opportunity there. And I think that, again, we're seeing that consciousness coming to life. I think the one watch out for me is, as much as I'm a big advocate of the plant-based eating trend, I think we have to be really careful and kind of have buyers beware that it's not just the next junk food. Because it will, when you have that much money behind an industry, there will be games with it. There will be unhealthy snacks and alternatives. So people should not lose sight of the whole food plant-based movement, where we should have as minimally processed foods as possible, raw and cooked, not just, quick eats that might be plant-based but might still not be so healthy for your body and are still highly processed. So that's the only thing I would say. Just like anything else, it's about balance. It's about finding the pros and the cons and really leveraging the total benefits of the movement.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I can't stress that enough as well. And I always joke with people that sugar is vegan, so doesn't make for a healthy diet or healthy gut microbiome for that matter.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because it is such a fascinating, it's so complex and intricate, so much more beyond what people really need to know. However, let's talk about gut health and plant health, because you're an expert in this area and you have so much knowledge. So shift towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the diet thing is really important, and we always have a tendency to go to the extreme with diet. And, we had the low-fat diets and low-carb diets, and we're seeing more and more that the science is saying, these extreme diets are actually making us ill. So it's really important about finding a balance, and that's everything around diet and the gut microbiome, and active lifestyle fully impacts it as well. So it's not just the one. You really have to pull all the pillars together, which is what I love about your podcast.
Thank you.
But if you look at the plant-based whole food diet, there's a few benefits to it. it's getting a lot more healthy fiber in our diet. We're lacking so much fiber in the standard American diet, and that's what feeds your gut microbiome. And it's a really important part of it because we can't break down most of that fiber. We can't break down. It's really purely to feed our gut microbiome and keep them healthy. And then a lot of plants also are high in phytonutrients, which is, a lot of them we call superfood, but they're actually triggering a lot of metabolic activity within our system to cope with stress. And a lot of that is facilitated by our gut microbiome. So, shifting away from this calorie control and different ways of thinking about things, portion control, and looking at just getting foods in the right ratios on our plate that can support this balanced gut. And I take that also into our beverages because I think we forget about beverages so much. If you look at coffee, they estimate that the average American gets over 75% of their antioxidants in their coffee. But what do? We take a really good superfood and we add hydrogenated fats and high fructose corn syrup and create these delicious beverages that people are addicted to. But we take away some of these really positive aspects of that superfood and we actually instead of for us. So I think we have to be very aware of what we're putting in our bodies and how it's supporting our gut microbiome. We can't look at ourselves as a human entity. We got to look at the microbiome and how more than half of the DNA in our body are not human cells and are not human DNA. And that's a symbiotic relationship that we have to keep in balance. So when you're feeding yourself, it's not just your human cells that you're feeding. It's this incredible kind of neural network that's built up in your gut that supports your brain health, that supports your immune health in so many different ways. And we're just starting to understand it. We first had the Human Microbiome Project that's well underway, and we're starting to learn about the gut microbiome and its interaction with the brain and the immune system. And then because there was so much incredible information that came out of that, we started the Earth Microbiome Project, which is even more fascinating because it takes it in a much more macro scale. And we're starting to finally just scratch the surface of how organisms that surround us, they've been around for 3.5 billion years versus us, who are pretty new to this world. And we know what they estimate with that project is we know about 10 to the minus 22% about the DNA that is non-human, which is essentially zero. I mean, if you really extrapolate that out, that's a lot of zeros.
Right.
So we're barely understanding how critical these organisms are, not just the plant health, but the human health, and even the interrelationship of plant holobiomes and human holobiomes and how interconnected those are. So it's not just the food we put in our body, it's even how that food was grown, what kind of microbiome did that plant have, and are they passing that on to me as a human interacting in a positive way with my gut microbiome? So it's really fascinating, some of the early studies and how much it's showing us about the impact on human health. So we've found out in the last few years that over 75% of our immune system actually lines our gut, the mucosal immune system. So what we put in our body can trigger a lot of things very quickly. So it can trigger inflammation. It can trigger, if we lose balance of our gut microbiome, it can trigger autoimmune disease and a lot of just really unhealthy loss of balance within our gut can cause a lot of different challenges. We know now that they're calling the gut the second brain because, just as one example, a lot of our neurotransmitters are actually being generated in the gut in this symbiotic relationship with our gut microbiome. So over 70% of your serotonin, the neurotransmitter that makes us happy, is actually being generated in the gut. So think about those two functions in the body, like our neurotransmitters that impact our mood and how we respond to the world around us, and our immune system. Like if those two things aren't like a top priority, we're not very focused on health. And we now know the gut microbiome and the balance of that is absolutely critical to doing that. And if you think about it, we do know that having that healthy balance can help eliminate invading pathogens. So, they're lining the gut. Our gut microbiome is working with us, if it's healthy and it's balanced, to defend against pathogens. If that's happening on our skin, our entire holobiome. But what we know is if we lose that balance, we can then lose the balance with self-tolerance, and autoimmune diseases can become a problem. And that's, we're really putting more emphasis on what are the right foods and balances to keep that gut microbiome really healthy so we don't have this immune dysregulation, autoimmune disorders, which are going through the roof, and then also the impact on chronic illness. And this is really fascinating. If you look at some of the research that Johns Hopkins is doing on cancer and the connection with the gut microbiome, it is incredible. It's still, again, barely scratching the surface. We're just starting to understand that relationship. But we are now seeing that there absolutely is an interaction between the microbiome, the immune system, and the epithelial cells that line the colon when it comes to colon cancer, which is one of the most aggressive cancers out there. I worked in that field for a long time with chemotherapy treatment, and it's a challenging disease. And we now know that that's heavily connected to the microbiome and the gut microbiome. So we don't know all the metabolic pathways. We don't know exactly what's causing it, but we know that that imbalance is very much detrimental to human health. And every day there are studies being performed and more research coming out that's showing this interrelationship between these organisms that have been around far longer than we have that can either help our health or can hinder it if we lose that balance. And it's similar, for me, I focus a lot also on the soil microbiome because we have a farm and we focus on the health of the soil microbiome. And it's so similar. It's actually eerily similar how close it is to the gut microbiome of a human and what we call the rhizosphere microbiome of a plant. It's where its immune system resides. It's where a lot of the plants, if you would say it has a brain, its neural network resides and how it responds and copes with stress. And so when we grow plants also with a balance of their microbiome, we grow much healthier plants that are much better able to cope with stress. And we also know that some of that microbiome passes along when we eat the plants, especially if they're minimally processed. So there is absolutely this incredible symbiotic relationship that we know very, very little about. And the studies that are starting to be released are, in my opinion, pretty mind-blowing, showing how strong that connection is and how important it is that we understand it as quickly as possible. Even things like they're now doing studies with microorganisms where they're actually bypassing the plant and they're just directly studying the impact of that soil microbe, the isolated one, on how the human body copes with stress. So there's been some studies with PTSD patients that just directly ingest isolated soil microbes, and they're seeing that it increases their ability to cope with stress. So we now know with some of the isolated ones that there's this profound effect on the human body. We just don't fully know how it all fits together and the exact mechanisms that are triggering it. So it's going to be a really interesting field. I really encourage people to look at the Human Microbiome Project, the Earth Microbiome Project, and then epigenetics, which is kind of spinning off of that with a huge momentum, because we're realizing that not only is this happening kind of at a cellular level, but it's actually impacting the way humans express their DNA and as well the way plants express their DNA as, again, part of that coping mechanism. So it's, again, extremely fascinating of nutrition and active lifestyle, because both of those directly impact the gut. Absolutely should be a priority for everyone. And until we understand more, we at least know that it's really important to keep the balance. So we should really prioritize that in our lives and for our patients and everyone around.
See, this is exactly why I can talk to you and listen to you for hours, Jennifer, because we are on the cusp, on the edge of all of this phenomenal information regarding that. The Microbiome Project is so fascinating. I have to say, it's just super cool. It's where, the little science nerd in me comes out, but it goes so much beyond that. And this is why when I say we're moving towards a new way of living with diet and agriculture and lifestyle in general, I sincerely mean it. And so many things come to my mind that I want to bring up. And when we're, does everybody have to dive into the minutia of it? No. And understand the mechanisms? No. The main thing is when we talk lifestyle, when we talk like wellness and these 4 pillars of sleep, exercise, nutrition, the stress management, they're all tied together in a very real way that has such a profound impact on our health. Just like you said, with that, the gut alone And cancer, think of that. It's very near and dear to my heart. And I don't know a single person who isn't affected, doesn't have somebody either in their own family, their network of friends who hasn't had cancer or even currently is fighting cancer, right? So even from that, I want to mention this tagline that I've had for so long as a dietitian, nutritionist out there educating people. And I call it we'll say the 3 F's, even though one is a PH, but it's good fats, fiber, and phytonutrients. And if you think about that, and you essentially said that, if you focus on getting enough good fat, fiber, and phytonutrients, say take an avocado, like a lot of those 3 things are found in a lot of the same plant foods is my point. So, right?
Absolutely. And that's where these fad diets are really a little bit scary, because look at the wave of low fat diets that came to the US for almost 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And look at the way chronic illness has skyrocketed. So we took out the healthy fat, we replaced it with a whole lot of processed fat, and we're really suffering because of it. So, and then, we have kind of an issue with the low carb, because if you're eating healthy, unprocessed carbs, which vegetables are mainly carbs, we know there's thousands of studies showing that we're not getting enough of that. Yet I have people that are like, I can't eat that. That's too many carbs.
I know.
It's about balance. That's why I like when people can look at things at a systematic view rather than in isolation, because it's always about balance. And that's what I feel we've lost. And like you said, with the pillars, it's not just about the nutrition. It's about the stress management and active lifestyle, and all the different components of finding that balance. But it's the same with our nutrition. I'm not an extreme person myself with anything. I eat a heavily reducitarian diet, so I'm mainly plant-based. But I'm really careful with how I balance what I put on my plate. And I'm not too extreme one way or the other, but I do try to make sure it's clean food, and that I kind of go the reverse of the typical American. The way we kind of trained ourselves is, I always say you go to a restaurant and they say, you order an entree. What is the entree? Usually a huge slab of protein. And then you order a little side, and it's usually like half a serving of vegetables and, or rice or something like that. Right. Sometimes it's not even vegetables, right? And I always tell people at least have your main course, your entree, be a huge platter for vegetables. You can almost never eat too much. And it's going to fill you up because fiber is satiating. So it's going to trigger all the right response in the body. Whereas when we eat super processed foods, it doesn't trigger satiation properly. Our body doesn't really process it right. So it just creates this entire cascade of negative effects within the body. So yeah, I think it's so important that we find that balance.
That's exactly the mission that I'm on, Jennifer, is to undo all the damage that has been done over the past few fad and bad diet decades. Yeah. And it's really true. So we're working daily, at least you and I know are, and it's fun. It's fun. It's rewarding because you see clear benefits from changing these, I want to, of course, focus on diet. However, all of those they do work together. The balance of getting daily exercise, moving more. People became way too sedentary during COVID, including myself. But really with diet, the balance is the key message there. The balance, as I said, the good fats, fiber, phytonutrients. In other words, instead of saying, focusing so much on the macronutrients in general terms that people don't even understand, meaning, too many carbs, not too much fat, get more protein. So carbs, fats, and protein do need to be balanced in the right way. And I love to say that, guess what? The majority of your calories every day need to come from good carbs. So you actually answered one of my questions already, which is kind of like, what is your daily diet? What are your habits? So you already answered that. And unfortunately, I think we're already running out of time, and I really know that we need to continue the conversation. So one thing, though, that I would love for you to give to listeners, Jennifer, is, let's say if you have one actionable takeaway, meaning do you have any sort of go-to tool for, your best daily diet? We'll put it that way.
I mean, I think the number one thing is what I said, is just flip your perception of an entree versus a side dish. And if you are going to eat meat, I'm not a full vegan myself. And I know that can be really intimidating to a lot of people. So I just say with that concept of your entree should really be a good hearty portion of healthy, minimally processed fruits and vegetables. And then if you are going to eat meat or any protein for that matter, it should be a really premium, small portion of it that your body can digest. I try to encourage people, try to really fill your plate with colorful fruits and vegetables, really diverse colors. And it can be a big shift for people when they first start doing that. Their stomach's probably grumbling a little bit and stuff because it's actually starting to flow and work properly. And I think that's probably my number one advice for people is just start doing it. Even with my kids, they don't love every vegetable, even though, they're around a farm all the time.
Yeah.
I just always put a lot on their plate. I put a lot of carrots, like things that I know that they'll eat. Bell pepper, carrots, different things, and fruit. And they'll usually nibble down a good share of it. And so as long as I get a lot on there, I know that they'll eat a good share of it. And that's what I encourage for as well.
I hear you as a parent. It's a challenge, even though it's our profession. I'm a big fan of smoothies and just trying new things with my kids all the time. And what I say to people too is I create my plate every night is, a big part of it is my huge salad because I love my salads. And so I say, even if they don't do it, I'm building their idea, their concept of what constitutes a really healthy plate. So
absolutely.
it's.
And I guess one last thing that I would recommend, especially for people that have kids, is grow some herbs or microgreens or something on your windowsill and let your kids be a part of it, because connecting with a plant changes your perspective of so many things. For one, it's health. It's good to connect with plants. It helps you appreciate farming and how difficult it can be to grow just a single plant, let alone thousands, which most farms have. So people tend to waste less food because they can appreciate it so much more. And then children can be part of the growing process, and it's fascinating. If you watch children watch a plant grow, like a really fast plant, like a pea shoot, it can grow in 5 days. So they can literally almost sit there and watch it grow. It's so fast. And pea shoots are so nutrient rich. They're so easy to grow. And my kids, I let them cut them with scissors, so it's kind of like a fun activity. And they'll just they'll eat them right from the tray, like with the scissors. And so anything that you can do to get your kids involved and excited about it and part of the process, they're going to also be more apt to want to eat those because it's part of like growing it and they have a lot of pride in it. So that's another thing, that the more you can connect to your food and connect your family to your food, like it brings you to a whole new level of consciousness of that connection to the plant and body.
That's so true. And you're bringing up so many other things that I want to talk about with you. So we have to continue this discussion about, right, growing your own locally seasonal foods. I love all of that. And flavor, we're going to talk more about flavor, the herbs, really tasting something that's fresh from the garden versus, has traveled around the globe and was picked 3 weeks ago. So definitely we'll continue this discussion, Jennifer. And I'm so sad to end it. However, we'll hook people and talk some more. And I always like to ask my guests, shifting gears before we say goodbye, what is one thing you're grateful for today?
I am grateful that I have the knowledge and the access to clean, healthy food myself. So I have my own garden and I have a farm right down the street. And for me, that's been a blessing because I'm able to put the healthy food in my body that I need to. And I'm grateful to be part of a movement that's working really hard to make that accessible to everyone. So I'm grateful for that every day.
Thank you. And I'm grateful for you being here, and the fact that we are the neighbors, basically, in the Garden State of New Jersey. And I love what you do, Jennifer. I love speaking with you. So thank you again. And I would be thrilled to have you back sometime very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that you share this education with the world. It's really important, especially this day and age. So thank you as well for what you do.
Thanks. Finally, how can listeners find you?
So you can look us up at nutritionforlongevity.com. I know it's long, but you can check out our website and our products. And we have a blog and a lot of information on the things I just talked about and stuff about our regenerative farm. So a lot of information there. We're also pretty much on all the social media platforms if you just search Nutrition for Longevity.
Fabulous. Thanks again, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to join me and listen to this episode. Listeners can find more information and also subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast at www.ccphp.net/SENS/podcast. That's www.ccphp.net/sens/podcast. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. We are a concierge medicine organization that partners with exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled healthcare experience while also empowering our members to achieve their optimal well-being. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.